Hello there. Well, for many of us, people in the UK today, it feels as if the country is not simply going through a difficult moment, but it's now entering into a long period of decline. Well, some of us even feel it's been entering a long period of decline for years. No, it's not paranoia, and it's not sudden. The pressures we see, NHS strain for example, unaffordable housing, rising in sickness, stagnant wages, failing councils, they're not isolated events, they're not one-offs. They're the accumulated consequences of more than 2 decades of political avoidance, short-termism, and unwillingness to confront the deep structural problems. Now we're standing in the middle of this decline right now. To understand where the next 10 years may lead, we've got to understand how we got here. Millions of us are waiting for treatment. GP access is strained. Staff shortages are chronic. Many conditions that could be treated early become long-term. Then that becomes life-affecting illnesses. The system now absorbs far more resources to fix problems that should never have become serious. Rents far outpace wages. Social housing has not been built at a scale for decades. House prices climb that beyond the ordinary incomes that can support it. £250,000 my youngest lad has paid for a house. Homelessness is rising. Councils are collapsing under the cost of temporary accommodation. And a growing number of working age people are unable to work because long-term illnesses have overtaken their lives. This has become one of the country's biggest economic drains. Not because people suddenly stop wanting to work, but because health outcomes collapsed. The councils declaring bankruptcy, crumbling schools, long legal backlogs, police stretched thin, public transport unreliable, local services hollowed out. People feel abandoned because in many places now they are. Wages barely move. Productivity stalls. Investment is weak. Inflation left households poorer. The cost of living crisis never really ended. It just hardened into everyday life. The UK exists today, but this situation didn't appear out of nowhere. Politicians from all major parties, the lot of them, share responsibility. Not because they acted maliciously, but because they failed to act meaningfully. For 2 decades, governments consistently prioritised short-term political wins, headline policies, and avoiding difficult structural reforms. Issues that required long-term thinking, health infrastructure, social care, productivity, housing, were endlessly postponed. The UK spent years investing less than comparable nations in healthcare capacity, social care, education, housing, transport infrastructure. Now the results in my opinion, were predictable. Rising demand without rising capacity. The governments encouraged rising house prices because it pleased existing homeowners and boosted the economy in the short term. But they did not build enough homes. They did not regulate the private rental market. This allowed buy-to-let to expand without limits. This turned housing into a wealth machine for some and a debt trap for others. They allowed the NHS to drift into crisis. No government has reformed social care. No government invested enough in training. No government expanded the NHS capacity to meet the ageing population. No government modernised systems. All governments relied on staff goodwill to plug any gaps. Now, work capability, sickness benefits, universal credit reforms, all aimed at saving money without addressing the real causes of the rising disabilities situation. Poor health outcomes, mental health collapse, insecure work, long medical waits. Cuts never solved the problem. They just push people into hardship. And of course, for 25 years that I know of, politicians promised European levels of public services, American levels of low taxation. This was impossible. Instead of admitting it, governments borrowed quietly and let the systems degrade. And they've kicked every difficult problem down the road. The can's been kicked down the road for the next lot to pick up, to kick down the road. Social care crisis, postponed. NHS reform, postponed. House building strategy, postponed. Local government funding model, postponed. Pension sustainability, postponed. Industrial strategies, postponed. The result is that all postponed problems are here. They've arrived. They're here now. All at once. Boom. If no meaningful change occurs, not cosmetic policy, but structural reform, when the decline continues, the shape of that decline is already visible. The healthcare outcomes worsen. NHS will grow. Waits will grow. More people fall out of work. We're seeing it. Long-term illnesses become more common. Life expectancy continues to fall. The UK has become a country where the sick is a normal part of middle age. Housing becomes more unaffordable. Rents rise. More families live in temporary accommodation. Evictions increase. Owning a home becomes rare for anyone under the age of 40. Council spends billions on emergency housing. Housing consumes an ever larger share of household income. Our public services. More councils are declaring bankruptcy. Libraries, youth centres, community spaces disappear. The court backlogs grow. Transport cuts expand. Police become reactive rather than preventative. Daily life becomes more inconvenient, more stressful, and certainly less safe. Living standards, they're falling steadily, aren't they? Food becomes a higher share of our budgets. Energy affordability worsens. Disposable income shrinks. Middle-income households feel like today's low-income households. And people become poorer even if they work full time. Work is becoming more insecure. Automation, low investment and stagnation. That means fewer stable jobs. But there's more gig and 0 hours work. Fewer paths to career progressions. And many people now are feeling trapped in low paying jobs and roles. The community is free. As services collapse, the costs rise. Loneliness is increasing. Crime and antisocial behaviour rise. Social trust erodes. Mental health declines. Communities feeling unsupported and increasingly anxious. And resentment grows then between generations, regions and socio-economic groups. Populism gains ground as traditional politics loses trust. The welfare state becomes overstretched. More claimants due to illnesses. Higher housing costs driven by private rents. A shrinking tax base. Higher borrowing costs. The government responds with cuts, which worsen hardships and increase long-term costs. Now, without investment, productivity stays flat. Without productivity, wages stagnate. Without wages, tax receipts stagnate. Without tax receipts, services crumble. And this decline becomes self-reinforcing. Now, the UK is not on the brink of a sudden collapse. It's experienced a slow, grinding erosion of living standards, public services, health outcomes and social trust. Exactly the pattern that occurs when long-term problems are ignored. The evidence is already visible. We're not imagining it, any of us. We're standing in the early to middle stages of it. And the next decade will either be a continuation of decline or the turning point where uncomfortable truths are finally faced and structural reform begins. The choice lies with political leaders and the public, who must hold them to accountability. Now, in the meantime, take care.